Sarah didn't notice her hands trembling when she opened the letter. The lines written 30 years ago revealed a secret she had never heard before. But the most shocking part was who the letter was addressed to, because that name was hers, written in handwriting she recognized but had never seen in a letter before. The fluorescent lights hummed softly in the corridors of St. Mary's Hospital in downtown Chicago as Sarah Martinez pushed her cleaning cart down the polished linoleum floors. It was 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the hospital had settled into its quieter nighttime rhythm. Sarah had been working the night cleaning shift at St. Mary's for 15 years. At 42, she had the routine down to a precise science. Start on the 7th floor, work her way down to the 3rd, taking special care with the intensive care units and surgical recovery rooms. She wore the standard-issue navy blue uniform of the hospital's housekeeping staff, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and comfortable sneakers that had walked thousands of miles through these hallways. Sarah took pride in her work, even if others might not notice the difference between a properly cleaned room and a hastily wiped one. As she approached room 314, Sarah checked her watch. She was running slightly behind schedule, but not enough to worry about. Room 314 had been occupied by an elderly patient, Mrs. Eleanor Whitman, who had passed away peacefully that morning surrounded by family. Sarah unlocked the room and wheeled her cart inside. The bed had been stripped by the day shift, but she would need to do a complete deep clean before the room could be prepared for the next patient. She started with her usual routine, disinfecting all surfaces, cleaning the bathroom thoroughly, checking the drawers and closets for any forgotten belongings. As she stripped the pillowcases from the bed, Sarah felt something crinkle beneath her fingers. She carefully lifted the pillow and found a manila envelope, yellowed with age and sealed with tape that had long since lost its adhesive properties. The envelope was addressed in careful cursive handwriting, to be opened only by Sarah Martinez. Sarah's breath caught in her throat, her name, written in handwriting she didn't recognize, on an envelope that looked decades old. She turned it over in her hands, studying it carefully. There was no postmark, no return address, just her name written in fading blue ink. Hospital protocol said she should turn in any found items immediately. But this wasn't just any found item. This was addressed to her, specifically. Sarah's hands were trembling slightly as she sat down in the room's single chair, the envelope in her lap. She looked at the envelope again, studying the handwriting more carefully. There was something familiar about it, something that tugged at the edges of her memory like a half-remembered song. Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, also yellowed with age, covered in the same careful handwriting. The letter was dated 30 years ago, addressed to "My dearest Sarah," and signed, "With all my love, Elena Martinez." Sarah's hands began to shake in earnest now. Elena Martinez had been her mother's name. But her mother had died when Sarah was 12, and Sarah was certain her mother had never written her a letter. But as Sarah read the opening lines, her world began to tilt on its axis. "My dearest Sarah, if you are reading this, then the secret I have carried for so long must finally be told. You are not who you think you are, and I am not who you believe me to be. The story I told you about your father was not the truth. The story I told you about your birth was not the truth. And most importantly, you have a brother you have never met, who has been searching for you for 30 years. Sarah's vision blurred as tears filled her eyes. She set the letter down for a moment, trying to process what she was reading. Her mother had lied to her? About her father? About having a brother? She picked up the letter again and continued reading. Your real name is Sarah Elena Castellanos. You were born not in Chicago, as I told you, but in a small town in New Mexico called Las Cruces. Your father, Diego Castellanos, is not dead. When you were 3 years old, we had to leave him behind for reasons I pray you will understand. We were running from something dangerous, something that threatened all of our lives. Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The letter continued. You have a brother, Miguel Castellanos, who was 5 when we left. He stayed with your father because I could only manage to take one child safely. The decision to leave him behind has haunted me every day since. But I made a promise to myself that when you were old enough, when it was safe enough, I would tell you the truth and help you find your family. Sarah read the date on the letter again. 30 years ago would have been when she was 12, right around the time her mother died. My darling girl, by the time you read this, I will probably be gone. The cancer is spreading faster than the doctors expected. I am leaving this letter with someone I trust, someone who promised me it would find its way to you when the time was right. The letter went on to explain that Elena had changed their names and created new identities in Chicago to escape from dangerous people connected to her brother's involvement with drug dealers. The family had been forced to split up for safety, with the plan to reunite when it was safe. Your father lives at 1247 Desert Rose Drive in Las Cruces, New Mexico, or at least he did when I wrote this letter. Your brother Miguel would be 37 now. I have enclosed what little money I could save and the original documents that prove who you really are. Your real birth certificate is hidden behind the photograph of us at Lincoln Park Zoo. Do you remember that day? Sarah's breath caught. She remembered that photograph. She still had it, in a box in her small apartment. The letter concluded, I know this is overwhelming, my sweet girl. I know it changes everything you thought you knew about yourself. But please know that every decision I made was out of love for you. You have a family who loves you, who has been waiting for you. With all my love, always and forever, Elena Martinez. Or, as I was known before, Elena Castellanos, your mother. Sarah finished cleaning room 314 mechanically, her mind racing. She needed time to think, to process what she had learned, to figure out what to do next. When her shift ended at 7 a.m., Sarah drove to her small studio apartment in Pilsen and went straight to the closet where she kept a box of her few remaining possessions from childhood. She found the photograph her mother had mentioned, the 2 of them at Lincoln Park Zoo. With trembling fingers, Sarah carefully removed the photograph from its frame. Behind it, just as the letter had promised, was a folded document. Sarah unfolded it to find an official birth certificate from the state of New Mexico for Sarah Elena Castellanos, born in Las Cruces to Elena Castellanos and Diego Castellanos. Over the next few days, Sarah spent hours researching online. She searched for Diego Castellanos in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and found a Diego Castellanos who owned a small auto repair shop. In one article from 5 years ago, Diego was quoted talking about a scholarship fund he had established, dedicated to his daughter Sarah and son Miguel, and to the hope of family reunification. Sarah also found Miguel Castellanos, a high school teacher in Las Cruces who coached the soccer team. In the photos Sarah found online, Miguel had dark hair and kind eyes that reminded her of her own reflection. But how had this letter ended up with Mrs. Whitman? Sarah called the patient liaison office and was eventually put in touch with Eleanor Whitman's daughter, Janet. My mother mentioned you, Janet said over the phone. She said you were kind to her during her stays at the hospital. She actually asked about you specifically a few weeks before she died. After explaining about the letter, Sarah learned that Eleanor had worked as a social worker for the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services and had known Elena Martinez professionally. Eleanor had kept some of Elena's personal files, including instructions about the letter. 2 days later, Sarah met Janet at Eleanor Whitman's house, where they found a file marked Elena Martinez Confidential, containing Elena's full confession to Eleanor about what had happened 30 years ago. Elena's letter to Eleanor revealed the complete truth. Elena had been married to Diego Castellanos, living happily in Las Cruces with their 2 children. But Elena's brother Roberto had been involved with drug dealers who used his trucking business to transport narcotics. When Roberto was arrested and tried to cooperate with federal agents, the dealers found out. They murdered Roberto and came after Elena's family, believing she might have information about their operation. They came to our house on a Tuesday night. Elena had written to Eleanor. 3 men with guns, demanding to know what Roberto had told me. When I couldn't provide information I didn't have, they threatened to kill my children. Elena and Diego made the agonizing decision to split up the family. Diego would take Miguel and go underground. Elena would take Sarah to Chicago, where she had a college friend who could help her start over. "We thought it would be temporary," Elena wrote, "but the years passed, and it never felt safe. The dealers had long memories." Elena had become Elena Martinez and used her education background to get work with the Chicago foster care system, where she met Eleanor. Eleanor had helped Elena create new documents for Sarah and had promised to deliver the letter when the time was right. "Wait until you think she is strong enough to handle this truth," Elena had written to Eleanor. "Wait until you think she is ready to make the choice about whether to find her family or leave the past buried." Sarah decided she had to go to New Mexico. Through Janet's contacts, she was able to reach a social worker in Las Cruces named Maria Santos, who specialized in family reunification. Maria called Diego first to prepare him. Sarah was sitting in Maria's office when the call was made. "Mr. Castellanos," Maria said, "I'm calling because we may have located your daughter, Sarah. Is she safe? Is she well?" Diego's voice was thick with emotion. "She's here with me now," Maria said gently. "She's safe, she's healthy, and she very much wants to meet you." Sarah took the receiver with shaking hands. "Papa?" The word came out naturally, a word she hadn't spoken in 30 years. "Mija," Diego whispered, and then he was sobbing. "My little girl, my Sarah. We never stopped believing you would come home." The reunion took place at Maria's office the next day. When Diego and Miguel walked through the door, Sarah knew them immediately. Diego had graying hair and kind eyes, and Miguel moved with a grace that reminded her of her mother. "Papa," Sarah said, and Diego crossed the room and wrapped his daughter in his arms. Miguel joined the embrace, and 30 years of separation collapsed into nothing. "You look just like Mama," Miguel said when they finally broke apart, "especially your smile." They talked for hours. Sarah learned that Diego had remarried to a woman named Carmen, who worked as a nurse. Miguel was married to his high school sweetheart, Maria Ilana, and they had 3 children. Sarah, named for her aunt, Diego, named for his grandfather, and Ilana, named for the grandmother she'd never met. That evening, Sarah had dinner at Diego's house with the extended family. Carmen embraced her as if she had been waiting 30 years to gain a daughter. Miguel's children were shy at first, but curious about their newfound aunt. 10-year-old Sarah asked, "Are you going to stay forever now?" Sarah looked around the table at the faces of the family she had never known she had. "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "But I know I'm not going to disappear again." Sarah stayed in Las Cruces for 2 weeks, getting to know her family and the community she had been born into. Diego showed her around the auto shop, which had grown from a single-bay garage into a full-service automotive center. "I always told people I was building this for my children," Diego said, "even when I didn't know if I would ever see you again." Sarah realized she could contribute to the business through organization and customer service. Over the following days, she threw herself into understanding the business, organizing the filing system, and developing better customer service protocols. Miguel invited Sarah to visit his high school and meet his students. Sarah was surprised to discover that she enjoyed working with teenagers, helping with tutoring sessions, and even assisting with soccer practice. As her 2 weeks stretched into a month, Sarah realized she had a decision to make. She either needed to return to Chicago or commit to building a new life in New Mexico. Sitting in Diego's backyard on a Sunday afternoon, watching 3 generations of family play soccer and prepare for a barbecue, Sarah made her decision. This was what she had been missing her entire life: the sense of belonging somewhere, of being part of something larger than herself. Sarah called her supervisor at St. Mary's Hospital. "I need to resign," she said. "I've found my family and I want to stay with them." The next few months were a whirlwind. Sarah returned to Chicago to pack up her apartment and ship her belongings to New Mexico. She found a small apartment near the auto shop and officially joined Castellanos Auto Repair as office manager and customer service coordinator. Within 6 months, the shop's revenue had increased by 30% through better organization and customer service. But Sarah's most rewarding work happened in her spare time. She began volunteering at Miguel's high school, helping students with college applications and financial aid paperwork. She also started a support group for adults who had been separated from their families as children. Working with Maria Santos, Sarah helped other people search for lost relatives and navigate the emotional complexities of family reunification. A year after moving to Las Cruces, Sarah was asked to speak at a conference for social workers who specialized in family reunification. "My mother died when I was 12, Sarah began, but 30 years later she kept her promise to me. A letter hidden under a hospital pillow became the key to a reunion I never knew I needed." After her speech, Sarah was approached by a young woman named Isabella Rodriguez, who was looking for her sister. It was the first of many such conversations Sarah would have over the following years. 5 years after finding the letter, Sarah returned to room 314 at St. Mary's Hospital for a conference visit. The room looked exactly the same, but everything else had changed. Sarah was no longer the lonely cleaning lady. She was Sarah Castellanos, office manager of a thriving family business, volunteer coordinator for family reunification services, and beloved aunt to 3 children. She thought about Elena, who had made the ultimate sacrifice to keep her daughter safe. She thought about Eleanor Whitman, who had kept a promise for 30 years. And she thought about Diego and Miguel, who had never stopped believing their family would be whole again. "Excuse me, are you supposed to be in here?" a security guard asked. Sarah smiled and showed her visitor's badge. "I used to work here. I was just visiting the room where I found something that changed my life." "You're the one with the letter story," the guard said. "That's amazing that you found your family after all those years." That evening, Sarah called Diego from her hotel. "How's Chicago?" he asked. "Different," Sarah said, "smaller than I remembered. I'm ready to come home." "We'll be here," Diego said. "We'll always be here." 10 years after finding the letter, Sarah Castellanos stood before the New Mexico State Legislature, testifying in support of a bill that would create a statewide database for families separated by various circumstances. "My own family was separated for 30 years, Sarah told the lawmakers. "My mother made the difficult choice to take me and run from a dangerous situation. She died believing she would never see her family again, and I grew up believing I was alone in the world." Sarah had become a recognized advocate for family reunification services. The Castellanos Auto Repair Shop had grown into a small empire with 3 locations. But Sarah's proudest achievement was the Elena Martinez Foundation, which provided resources and support for families separated by crisis. The foundation had reunited over 200 families since its founding. Miguel had become the foundation's education director. His children, now teenagers, volunteered with youth outreach programs. "The letter my mother left for me wasn't just a message from the past," Sarah continued. "It was a bridge to the future. It gave me back not just my family, but my sense of purpose." The bill passed unanimously, creating the New Mexico Family Reconnection Database. After the legislative session, Sarah drove back to Las Cruces, where Diego was waiting to hear the results. "Mama would be proud," he said, when Sarah told him about the bill's passage. "She always believed that families belonged together, that love was stronger than fear." That evening, the extended Castellanos family gathered for their weekly Sunday dinner. Miguel's eldest daughter was now in college studying social work. His son was applying to law school to specialize in immigration and family law. Little Elena was volunteering with the foundation's intake hotline. "Tia Sarah," said Elena, "tell us again about the letter." Sarah smiled. "Once upon a time, there was a little girl who thought she was all alone in the world. But she wasn't alone at all. She just didn't know it yet. And 30 years later, a letter hidden under a hospital pillow taught her the most important lesson of all, that love never dies, family never forgets, and sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as ordinary moments in ordinary places." Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Maria Santos. "New case just came in. Siblings separated 25 years ago. One of them is in Chicago. Thought you might want to take this one personally." Sarah smiled and texted back, on my way. Because the work was never finished. There were always more families to reunite, more secrets to uncover, more letters waiting to be found. And Sarah Castellanos was exactly where she belonged, helping other people find their way home. As we reach the end of Sarah's incredible journey, I want you to take a moment and really think about the power of this story. A single letter hidden for 30 years under a hospital pillow didn't just reunite one family, it created a ripple effect that has touched hundreds of lives. Sarah's mother, Elena, made the ultimate sacrifice, giving up her own happiness to protect her daughter. But even in her darkest moment, dying alone and believing she had failed her family, Elena planted seeds of hope that would bloom decades later. That's the power of a mother's love. It transcends time, it transcends death, and it never, ever gives up. Eleanor Whitman, a social worker who could have simply followed protocol and filed away paperwork, instead chose to become the guardian of a family's future. For 30 years, she carried the weight of Sarah's story, waiting for exactly the right moment to change a life forever. That's the power of human compassion. Sometimes we're called to be the bridge between someone's past and their destiny. And Diego and Miguel? They never stopped believing. For 3 decades, they held space in their hearts for a little girl who might never come home. They built a business with her name on it, established scholarships in her honor, and never let a single day pass without hope. That's the power of unconditional love. It doesn't require proof. It doesn't demand guarantees. It simply believes. But here's what I find most beautiful about Sarah's story. She didn't just receive a miracle, she became one. The Elena Martinez Foundation has now reunited over 200 families. That means 200 children who thought they were alone have found their way home. That means 200 parents who thought they had lost everything have gotten their second chance. That means 200 families who were broken by circumstances beyond their control have been made whole again. Sarah took her pain and transformed it into purpose. She took her miracle and multiplied it. And that, my friends, is how one letter hidden under a hospital pillow ended up changing not just one life but hundreds. Now, I want to ask you something important. Are you someone who's searching for lost family? Are you someone who grew up with questions about your past that have never been answered? If so, please don't give up hope. Sarah's story proves that families can be reunited after decades of separation. Use DNA testing services, reach out to family reunification organizations, search social media, contact adoption agencies. Your own miracle reunion might be just one phone call away. Or maybe you're on the other side. Maybe you're someone who gave up a child for adoption years ago and you've wondered every day what happened to them. Maybe you're someone who lost touch with siblings during family upheaval and you've always hoped they were safe and happy somewhere. If that's you, know that they might be looking for you too. Register with reunion databases, work with search angels, be open to the possibility that love really can find a way. But even if you're not searching for family, Sarah's story has something powerful to teach all of us. Sometimes the most extraordinary things happen in the most ordinary moments. Sarah was just doing her job, cleaning a hospital room like she had thousands of times before. But because she paid attention, because she was open to possibility, because she had the courage to act when something felt significant, her entire life changed. How many opportunities do we miss because we're not paying attention? How many miracles pass us by because we're too busy, too distracted, too afraid to believe that something amazing could happen to us? If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that love really is stronger than time and distance, if it gave you hope that your own happy ending might be out there waiting for you, then please hit that like button right now. And more importantly, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with someone who's given up hope. Share it with someone who's searching for family. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that miracles still happen. And if you want to hear more stories like Sarah's stories about the power of love, the strength of hope, and the beautiful ways that broken families can be made whole again, then make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. We share new heartwarming stories every single week that will restore your faith in humanity and remind you that no matter how dark life gets, love always finds a way. Because here's what I believe with every fiber of my being: somewhere out there, someone is looking for you. Someone is hoping for their own letter, their own sign, their own miracle reunion. And sometimes, we all need to be reminded that we're not alone in this world, that we belong somewhere, that we are loved more than we know. Sarah thought she was just a cleaning lady in a hospital, but she was so much more. She was a daughter who was never forgotten. She was a sister who was always missed. She was the missing piece that made a family complete. And you're not just whoever you think you are either. You're someone's miracle waiting to happen. You're someone's answered prayer. You're someone's happy ending. So keep your hearts open, keep your eyes alert, and never stop believing that your own life-changing moment might be just around the corner. Because love never dies, family never forgets, and sometimes the most beautiful gifts come disguised as ordinary Tuesday nights in ordinary places. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Thank you for believing in the power of family, the strength of hope, and the miracle of love that transcends everything. Until next time, remember, you are loved, you belong somewhere, and your story isn't over yet. See you in the next story, where miracles happen and families find their way back to each other, no matter what stands in their way.